Well, we're glad to be back with you. And now I understand why you were spending so much time with your nose in that book.
That's right. The God of the Mountain, I was on the journey with Jim and Penny, and you can be too. You can take this same adventure. This book is just the beginning of God leading them and how he did it and the many miracles. It's just awesome. It is available in our bookstore and, of course, on their website.
Well, let's get back to them and see what's going on.
Well, I want to tell you, if you are interested in having them come speak and share this, you could probably stay a weekend, right? Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
yeah,
We love those type of events.
Take that long if you want them, but they are available, and that information is also on the website. So
Yes.
let's pick up where we left off, guys.
Excellent. Well, one of the things I was talking about was this Emmanuel Anadi, this archaeologist that did the work for Israel in the southern Negev. He had this identikit that I talked about in his book, The Mountain of God. And what we're starting to see is all of those pieces that he, as an archaeologist, said should be there, but never found at any site that he has ever looked at or investigated, are all starting to fall. Every one of these are falling into place. The next thing that we're going to show you is, and this was one of the elements that has to be there, is a graveyard that could contain 3,000 that died at the Golden
in
Calf
one day.
incident.
Right.
And
Exactly.
there should be a graveyard there. So we're going to go ahead and roll in. Well, I'm sorry?
Really?
Yes.
I never thought about that.
And tree, roll in. Let's look at this.
Just east of Mount Horeb and well north of the base of Mount Sinai, a massive graveyard lies undisturbed behind another archaeological fence the Saudis have erected. In this never-before-released footage, you can clearly see the ancient headstones dispersed throughout the area. My dad and I secretly slipped inside this fence to obtain proof on film of this remarkable site. We know according to Exodus 32:28 that at least 3,000 men died after worshiping the golden calf, and by Levitical law, would have to be buried outside the main camp. Back to the valley, a small white building is surrounded by a rectangular fence. We believe this was built over the ruins of the original tabernacle. Oddly enough, in a high plain between Horeb and Sinai, another rectangular set of stone ruins has been left alone. Moses moved the tabernacle away from the main camp after the golden calf incident. Evidence of this is plainly found here. On their way up into this high pasture, Mom and Dad found another surprise waiting for them. Amazing because of its rarity, an enormous cedar appears out of nowhere, with two others that are actually attached by root systems to this one. As you can see from the sparse landscape with Mount Sinai in the background, there are no others on any of these mountains. Cedars do not grow in this area at all. Why was this one here? Upon closer inspection, the trunk of this cedar is more than 8 feet thick. Smaller olive trees in Israel have been found to be over 2,000 years old. Moses was tending the flocks of Jethro when he turned aside to see the burning bush, and God spoke to him directly. Could this be that very plant? My sister Chelsea and I were also with my parents when we located the almond trees. These are important to find on the mountain because Aaron's rod was made from an almond tree and budded and produced ripe almonds according to Numbers 17:8. The bowls of the golden candlestick were also fashioned after the almond tree. Just as an interesting note, Horeb and Sinai are also covered with fig trees. Though subject to much debate, the nation of Israel has many times been referred to as the fig tree in prophecy. They are to be found only on these two mountains. Finally, quail can be seen all over the area to this day. It is theorized that they fly in huge numbers over the sea from Egypt, only to fall to the ground exhausted on the Arabian side. Exodus 16:13 reads, "And it came to pass at evening, the quails came up and covered the camp."
So you can see there's quite a bit of evidence that's gaining momentum here. We started out with that graveyard, and then we went into the other things. And of course, quail are not archaeological remains. Neither are almond trees or fig trees. But obviously, if you know your scripture, these things are highly important. If Aaron had a rod that budded and produced ripe almonds, it was not the rod of an oak tree.
That's right.
It was an almond tree. And the very name Jebel Makla, which is the dark black peak we believe to be Mount Sinai, that very name means Almond Mountain.
Really?
Jebel Laws.
Sorry, that's right.
Yeah.
I said Makla, what I'm talking about is Laws. It means Almond Mountain. Makla, on the other hand, Jebel Makla means the quarry.
Uh-huh.
And what came out of the side of the mountain? They quarried the pillars out of the side of the mountain. So you have to forgive me for
I'd never
flipping the two names around there. But
a
laws, we actually pronounce it laws. But in Hebrew as well as Arabic, there's a lot of those crossover words that are identical, Ras and Rosh. Same meaning, head of, in both Arabic and Hebrew. It's Ras in the Arabic and Rosh in the Hebrew. Laws, they actually pronounce it luz. And it's also pronounced luz in Hebrew, and it means the nut tree, or specifically the almond. So this Jebel Laws, the almond tree, okay? And how specific that is to the golden candlestick. You know, the seven-tier candlestick of the tabernacle was fashioned after the blossoms and the knops, as the King James calls it, of the almond tree. So you have all of these elements coming together right here.
The most important thing that you said, though, when I've had learned rabbis in Israel say to me, why Mount Sinai is down in Sinai, I'd say, with all those people that died, where are the bodies?
The grave. The graveyard is the thing that really nails this place down. It is one of the many things about this site.
And see, there's none down there.
I'm sorry?
No.
There's none down there.
No, there's none down there. In fact, if we'll
Let's go to photo 43 through 47.
You can see there in the yellow where we've got it marked. Do you see how this map is beginning to fill up around these two mountains of various potential matches to the biblical record? Okay, what's encompassed in this picture, the outer red ring is a fence that the Saudis have, of course, blocking this area off. But you can see that the landform comes up a bit and there's like a high platform. This area is larger than the size of a football field. It's enormous. And we do have, as we were speaking of earlier, a biblical precedent that to mark a grave, Jacob took a stone and stood it up as a pillar which marked the grave of Rachel. So it was something that they did do in this day and time. All of these gravestones are standing out there in this field that the Saudis have marked off.
Yeah.
And that's my son. At that point in time, he's far taller than I am now, but at that point in time he was about my height, which is about 5'2". So you can see the size of these stones.
This is the largest stone in the area, but I'm not exaggerating when I say hundreds to thousands, and not more than that, in this area with multiple graves and layers of graves. So it's a and another interesting point is that they believe, and I believe this came from Glenn, a friend of ours who had done some wave imagery of this site. He said all the graves went in at one time. How they know that exactly, I'm not sure, but that was the conclusion that he had come to.
What he said was it appears that all of this ground was disturbed at once. In other words, first off, it's in the middle of nowhere. You don't have enough nomadic population in 1,000 years to produce that amount of graves. But secondarily, the ground appears to have all been disturbed at once. So what we would be talking about is a mass burial in the middle of nowhere. Why? And it's not, the markers there are not in what we have been told, and we lived in Arabia for a long lot of years, they're not burials that are marked in an Islamic fashion. So our best guess is that this happened sometime long before that era, and it all happened at once, and it just happens to be a couple of miles or kilometers probably north out of this area where this congregation would have been, if we're correct about the fact that they were there in this valley. So, I mean, you know, you're looking at this and then you see quail and almond trees and fig trees and
the almond trees, again, the almond tree makes a perfect walking stick, and we found that out because I wanted to get a couple from the trees, and the way they come out of the trunk is they come out straight as an arrow for about 6 feet. So you get these nice 1.5-inch branches that are very straight and long. So we were able to cut a couple of these, and we have brought them back to us. But this is Dr. Leonard Moeller, who has written the book, The Exodus Case, which we offer on our website as well. But you can see me standing there with him, and we're showing images, and in our hand, this is a slide from our PowerPoint presentation, so you can't see the hands, but the hands are full of the almonds. And the note on the bottom says that my birthday, September 24th, 54, but notice his.
Same day.
Exact
The same day.
So we have a man on the other side of the planet, and Jim and Penny coming together over this mountain because he had written his book well before he knew who we were, but he was using our images.
Where was he from?
And he's from Sweden.
Sweden.
Yep, he's from Sweden. And again, he's got a phenomenal work that is called The Exodus Case, and that is offered on our website.
Right.
So I think we ought to go to the rock at Horeb. Roll in.
Possibly the greatest witness giving validity to Mount Sinai being in Arabia is the rock at Horeb. This enormous rock is split cleanly down the middle and is completely different from anything else in the region. It stands high atop one of the boulder hills that dot the landscape and on the west side of Horeb, not Sinai. The Bible identifies it exactly this way. I'm standing on the back side of the rock here, and it's easy to see just how large it really is. As I began my walk between the two giant slabs of rock, I became acutely aware that something entirely miraculous had taken place here long ago. Making my way right through the middle of the split, scriptures started rolling over and over again in my head. They became alive to me as I made it through and sat down on the front side. I began to notice immediately the deep channels that were cut into the stone both in front and the back of this rock. You can see one of these channels clearly here. Deep gouges and grooves are apparent at the base also, along with a strange erosion pattern from below that is unique to this rock and no others in the valley. With rainfall every 10 years amounting to less than an inch here, these very obvious cuts made by copious water flows were indeed compelling. Again, the channels are obvious. As we followed the course of the water all the way down and into the valley, we realized the immediate area under the rock was of a smooth and unbroken granite, unlike the crushed particles of stone we'd been hiking on all over the rest of the region. If this rock was the one Moses struck, the waters would have cooled up substantially and the whole of Israel, including their flocks, could have taken their fill and been satisfied. In addition, a stone altar lies at the ground base of this rock. The Amalek came to fight Israel there at Rephidim, where the rock was, and after the battle Moses built an altar and called it Jehovah Nissi. This giant stone has a circular pit we believe was formed by cumulative fires. Clean through this rock at the ground level below, evidence of ash can be seen. Psalm 78:15 and 16 says, "He clave the rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink as out of the great depths. He brought streams also out of the rock, and caused the waters to run down like rivers."
Plainly how large that rock really
it's
is. And I
massive.
tell you what, we found that rock the very first time. It was April the 2nd of 1992. We were completely lost. We thought we were going to come up in a valley and climb up over the top of the mountain and get down into that area where the pillars and all are. We were completely off base. But you know what? Sometimes you're off base by design.
Yes.
And what ended up happening, we came upon this rock, and if you'll go ahead and put up the map, we'll show you exactly where it's located.
48.
You see in the yellow there, the rock at Horeb. And the reason why I was telling you earlier we believe these two peaks are important is because that rock is never spoken of as the rock at Sinai. It's only ever spoken of as the rock at Horeb. And that is the side, it's on the west side of this other mountain, the one properly called Jebel Lawz. So that's where it's located, and if you go to the next picture, you can see just how it stands out in the landscape.
My.
In fact, I put we made the cover of my book this, because it's very, very specific. You know, in my little Sunday school mind, I guess, I had pictured that Moses tapped a little rock and everybody stood in line with their little cup. No. You got to think way bigger than that. They've been 3 days in the wilderness. That's actually Dr. Leonard Moeller right there in the trip we made in 2003. You can see he's halfway up the rock there. You see how big it is. Everything that we have found in this landscape is far bigger than we could have ever imagined. But what happened is this is an enormous rock, and the miracle that must have taken place there when Moses struck that rock the first time